My dear friends, I think you'll agree that no matter what spiritual direction we are headed along life's journey, our common quest is how to make meanings of our lives, for that's who and what you are. It's who we all are, meaning makers. But if God is the source of meaning, just how much of God's characteristics can we human beings ever know? Can we ever know God absolutely? Enter this week's Torah portion, Exodus 30 through 34, Ki Tisa. It suggests that we really can't. 3 months after our people leave Egypt, a mere 40 days after God speaks to our people at Mount Sinai, our ancestors build an idol, worship a false god. The rabbis tell us that Moses was just hours late in returning from Mount Sinai when the people panicked. You remember they came to Moses, demanded of Aaron, make us a god who'll go before us, for this man Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. And you can see it beautifully outside the Danziger Chapel in our Living Torah artistically as you leave to the left. And so Moses returns with the 10 Commandments. As he does, God becomes furious. He tells Moses, God says, let my anger blaze forth that I may destroy this people. But Moses intercedes. He cajoles God and asks God not to destroy after Israel. After all, what would the Egyptians say if after all that God had done, God simply wiped the Israelites out? What most people don't think about is that God backs down. God says, okay. But no sooner does Moses come down the mountain that he loses it. When Moses sees the people having their orgy at the golden calf, he hurls the tablets from his hands, shatters them at the foot of the mountain. Moses' actions are shocking. How could he smash the tablets, the very tablets above this ark, the original ones that God gave him? Was it anger or despair that inspired such extreme behavior? Or did Moses simply lose the will to lead? The Midrash tells us that when Moses saw the people dancing around this golden calf, the letters literally flew off the tablets. So instead of carrying God's word, which Moses didn't have a problem doing, he was burdened with 2 heavy stones. They weighed too much, so he had no choice but to drop them. He couldn't lead a people who were unwilling to believe in some force, some meaning called God. So he took extreme measures to remind the people of what really counts. Sometimes we all need an extreme reminder of what really counts. I'm reminded when you watch local news pieces where the heat or water is shut off for a mother of 3 in South Memphis or North Memphis or maybe even East Memphis with no income, until the news is broadcast and people come to their help. That's what Moses did. He got the attention of the people, not only with his action, but by his appearance. And in seeking reconciliation between God and the Jewish people after the golden calf, and sensing that God was okay with us now, positively inclined toward Moses, Moses asks God the question, let me see your presence. Show me you, God. God says, I'll make all my goodness pass before you, but you cannot see my face, for no man may see my face and live. You cannot see my face. It says, but v'ra'ita et achorai ufanai lo yera'u. But you can see my after effects. I think you'll all agree that we'll never all be able to understand the mysteries of the universe. How can any of us know everything about God? Like Moses, we can only perceive God. We can discern God's presence in good times and hard times, or in retrospect, looking back in our lives. Just like a sailing vessel leaves behind it a wake of white foam, or just like footprints in the sand when you walk along the beach, they indicate the passage of human feet, so do the many wonders of God leave their mark in this world and in our lives. We can sense God's presence through God's after effects, like in the people we meet, the experiences we share, the world in which we live. Things like love or God cannot be seen so much as felt and experienced. Just one more thing before I close about Moses coming down the mountain after talking God out of destroying the Jewish people and before losing it himself. You remember, he comes down Mount Sinai after his 40-day and night encounter with God. His face is radiant, so much so that the people shy away from looking at him. Moses has to wear a mask to cover his face. The Torah actually describes rays of light coming from Moses' face. But the Hebrew word for ray of light, keren, is also the Hebrew word for H-O-R-N in English. And one could easily mistranslate the verse that Moses came down the mountain with horns on his head instead of rays of light. Michelangelo did, if you've seen his sculpture. The idea that Jews have horns became a nasty anti-Semitic charge you still hear about today. There's still people who, upon learning about Jews, ask, how come you don't have horns? Not here, but in some places still because of the mistranslation. So Moses spends time in God's presence. He had light on his face. But back to the question of the night, knowing or seeing God. Did Moses really see God face to face? The Torah is inconsistent. This week, you could see it out in the Living Torah, God says, you cannot see my face, for no man may see me and live. But at the end of the Torah in Deuteronomy, the Torah teaches in the very end, never again did there arise in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord singled out face to face. Obviously, God doesn't have a real face, but God does have a presence. And Moses stood in that presence. Being in the presence of God transformed him. And that transformation became noticeable when Moses walked down the mountain, noticeable by the light on his face. Jews need to recapture this because we gave the world this idea of being awake to the presence of God. Buddhists also, who don't even believe in God, describe a similar story about the Buddha I learned in Cambodia from my friend Yoshat Kamakaro, the monk of Phnom Penh. Once in a far-off land, there lived a spiritual leader with a huge following of students and disciples. As the years went by, this great leader's following grew, and he became extremely popular. People came from all over to visit this Buddhist leader and learn at his feet. One day, a reporter came to write a story about this spiritual teacher. She asked, "Tell me, do you think you are God?" The spiritual teacher answered, "No, I am not God." "Do you think you are an angel?" "No, I am not an angel." "Do you think you are a prophet?" "No, I am not a prophet." "Do you think you are a saint?" "No, I am not a saint." The reporter looked at him with great skepticism. "If you are not God, nor an angel, nor a prophet, nor a saint, tell me, what are you?" The spiritual teacher answered with great simplicity, "That is simple. I am awake." Being in the presence of God, which Moses does this week, ought to be an experience that awakens us. Living in God's presence inspires us to give off light. And maybe that's why, my friends, we Jews are called a light unto the nations. May we all discover this light of Judaism and give it off, and stay awake and know that God is with us. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be, and let us say,